So we learned in part one that racial equality has been caused by events, and we need to deal with that. But then the question now becomes, traditionally we've tried to deal with those things directly, but that causes two different problems. So now that we've established that there is basis for racial inequality, there is systemic racism. It's a matter of, well, how best do we address that racial inequality? Resentment is a strong emotion. And, ever since the 80s and Reagan, that's really been a driving force with Republicans. Rage, culture wars. I think one of the key points from that was Reagan's, welfare queen thing, where he basically got into everybody's brain, or convinced everybody that, all black people were on welfare and they're all, taking advantage of the system, they're lazy, whatever else, blah, blah, blah. Resentment is a strong emotion. So the problem, I think, that happens with the Democratic Party now is we try to address the racial inequality and some of these issues, but we try to do it directly. And by, again, basically stating, we are doing this to help African Americans and racial inequality. And I think it's counterproductive, though, because it breeds resentment, or it can breed resentment. And so it's counterintuitive, because then, you breed resentment and people don't vote for you, and then you're not able to implement those things after the fact. So I think it's a matter of dealing with it indirectly. There's also a second reason why it doesn't help. I don't think it's beneficial to deal with these directly. And that's because a lot of times legislation or things that are done that are meant to be directly benefit African Americans, or to directly address the inequality issue, don't actually do their intended purpose, and actually can be counterproductive. And so I'm going to stop right here, because now we're going to do a jump cut. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. All right, so we're here now. And so again, we're talking about how many times the legislation or things the government does to try to directly help African Americans or solve the issue of racial equality actually isn't effective, and actually is counterproductive. I'm going to show you here in a second why. I'm going to show you three things, different levels, why that is. So to give background, 2017, Republicans passed their big tax cut. They passed their big tax cut. Basically the only thing that they did in Trump's 4 years. But one of the provisions they put in there was basically for, I don't want to call it urban renewal, or investing money into the black community. And if you remember, back in the 2020 election, he was really touting that as when he was trying to court black voters. I don't know if he really expected them to vote for him, or if he was just trying to get them to convince them to not come out and vote. But he was touting it, the investment into the black communities, right? So on the federal level, this was supposed to be a solution. Here we are, we're trying to invest into black communities. And so what it basically did is it made what known as economic opportunity areas of economic opportunity. And what it did was it offered tax breaks to developers to develop in those areas. And so the thought process is, okay, well, these are, poor black areas. They need, revitalization, need more money, retail there, things like that. But that's not what happened. So this is coming up here. This is a perfect example. So you see in this area right here, this actually, anecdotally, is told used to be where a black church was located at, and then it was, again, I think maybe 20 years ago, something like that, maybe less. City came in and said, "Oh, there's something wrong with the ground or something, and this isn't really for living, but retail, industrial can go on this or wherever else." So, tore the church down, clear all this off. Apparently, a couple years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, they did start building some retail, right? There's some retail there, but you see those nice, shiny new condominiums that start out at the 500,000s. Well, guess what? Those are being developed because of that economic opportunity area. So they actually rezoned this area. They said it wasn't livable. They actually, and it was, so that's why it was industrial retail. They actually rezoned it to residential, and now they're building a bunch of $400,000, $500,000 condominiums. That's not, and again, those aren't affordable homes. When we consider affordable homes, trying to help the black community, those aren't affordable homes. And two, they didn't even keep those tax breaks to, say, even black developers, black business owners. So, it was just a way, in actuality, it was targeted as, hey, we're helping the black communities revitalize and pour money into them. So it's not retail, and it's not benefiting the black community that way, and it's not going towards black businesses. It's really just putting more money into the pockets of people like Trump. So that's one right there. Second example of how targeted is another, things that are targeted to help the black community actually don't really help. Is there's another one, and I'm not gonna walk by it today. It's a little farther away. But it is, they are building, one of the things that the city government has decided to try to make more affordable housing, because we have affordable housing shortage, is to try to, let's say, regulate, coerce, whatever, anybody who's trying to do a development to include some type of quote unquote affordable housing in there. And so they're building what will be, this one unit over here, this one apartment complex, and again, in a black community. This is a black community, traditional black community that I'm walking in. It's where I live, actually. And it's 104 units. It's supposed to be Charlotte's second no-car development. So there's only 6 parking spaces there. And they're trying to say, again, the reason why I know all this stuff is because I've been to the zoning. When I moved here, I want to be involved. I want to get in the zoning. I want to make sure this stayed a diversified neighborhood. I want to try to prevent gentrification or further gentrification or slow down gentrification. Realizing at the same time too that I was a gentrifier. So, but that was one of the things. If I was moving here, I wanted to try to at least slow it down. So, no parking. 104 units. 50% of them are supposed to be affordable housing, right? Oh, that sounds great. 50%. Wow. Until you start crunching the numbers. So the developers, 50% of the units were supposed to be 80% of the median household income in Charlotte. Median household income in Charlotte is $65,000. 80% of that is $53,000. So I did that fast, and you can get on your calculator there. But $53,000. So first off, depends, I guess, where you live out or whatever else. But anybody, if you're watching this in Charlotte, knows that's not affordable. And I'm sure if you live out in Charlotte, you go, yeah, that's definitely not affordable. It's not affordable. That basically equates to, if someone works 52 weeks a year, 52, no vacation, 40 hours a week, 40 hours, the household would need to have a $25 an hour income to get to that 53,000 mark. So right there, they should give an understanding as far as what that is. How not affordable that really is. Also, then when you get to the granular of it, and as far as actually start looking at the units, the affordable ones that they're talking about are a little over 400 square feet for over $900 a month. 400 square feet, $900 a month. What family of four who's trying to earn $25 an hour is going to live in a 400 square foot apartment? They aren't. That's just the thing. And so, again, when you talk about affordable and we need to solve affordable housing, and we're making these houses affordable, well, what are you talking about in that? Who are you trying to make this affordable to? You're trying to say affordable for the black community, lower income blacks. Is a family of four, who's working, obviously they can't work minimum wage, maybe working a lower income a lower income job, going to be able to move into that, be able to afford it for one thing, and then want to move into it 400 square feet? It's not going to happen. And besides that too, the closest mass transit, there's no cars. The closest public transportation system, bus stop, is over a quarter mile away from this thing. The idea is for it to be bicycles and scooters. Does that sound like, again, a black family of four? No, that is a 23-year-old college graduate just starting off at Bank of America, got their new job, and now, it's awesome because we're giving them, taxpayers, ultimately paying for us, giving them a nice, cheap apartment, less than a half mile away from Bank of America Stadium, that they can hop on their scooter and then go to work and do all those things. So, again, example number two of when we're trying to sit there, and this is again on the local level, we're trying to say that, hey, we need to promote affordable housing, and we're trying to force developers into doing affordable housing, and they can sit there and go, look, we did this. It's counterproductive. It's not doing what it is. So I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna jump cut again to the next area to show you the third example of how legislation or governments trying to directly address black racial inequality doesn't work, is actually counterproductive. Okay, so now I'm back. So the other thing I didn't mention about that one I was talking about just a minute ago was that the land that it is getting built on was actually for retail, and they rezoned it to residential. So yet another example of there's a lack of retail in this area, and they rezoned it to residential. So not only are they giving a detriment to the black community here, or this community, I should say, because I'm part of it, community here by not bringing retail, but then they're also turning it residential, and again, making it so that these things aren't really affordable or benefit the black community here, or retaining the black community or bringing more black community in here. So a big thing that Charlotte has been going through here the last couple of years, a lot of controversy within the city, which is known as the Charlotte 2040 plan. And what it is basically, Charlotte trying to do some type of actual planning for how the city is going to look, shaping the city for the future, right? Rather than just letting it happen as is. And it's good. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. But like I said, there's been some controversy around it because one of the there's a affordable housing crisis in Charlotte, and it's actually pretty much around the U.S. at the same time too. So it's not just Charlotte, but it's very much Charlotte trying to address it. And one of the big, more controversial points of it was they talked about opening up single-family neighborhoods and allowing multifamily, duplex and multifamily construction in those. And it was across the board. There was so many different advocates for and against it on both sides or whatever else, and there was a lot of calls for that it was racist. People that are against it opening up were like, people were saying, hell, you're just doing it because of racism, because you don't want, multifamily, blacks moving into your all-white single-family home neighborhood. So it's a big controversy. And so I want to kind of show you here. This is the typical house here in this neighborhood. They've been getting bought. Residents have been selling them. Long-term residents have been selling them. They've been getting torn down, bigger single-family homes being built. So there is, that's how the gentrification is going on. You know, some of these properties, again, something like this, property's 230. They tear down the house, build a house that's, you know, charge 500, 550, maybe even 600,000 for it. So, you know, obviously that's an incentive. You know, people, you know, may, you know, who don't have a lot of income, see that 230. Hey, I might want to move. And some people are like, this is where I live. This is where I've been. I'm staying. And realize the same thing too with an affordable housing crisis. Well, you know, they got a 230 now. Where am I going to go? You know, I can't buy something else too. So that's been the issue. So we're talking about people arguing, saying that, you know, we don't want multifamily in single family because it's racism. But let me show you something. So again, we got another typical historical house here in this thing. Now I'm going to turn around and show you this monstrosity that's getting built. This duplex monstrosity that's going up here. All right. So we see that, right? Well, again, this is a historic black neighborhood. They bought the house, tore it down. Now there's basically no yard, but now they're building a duplex. And so this duplex, again, as you can see, as big as it is, they're probably going to charge $600,000, something close to that, for those houses. So again, you know, you can sit there and say that you don't want multifamily in white neighborhoods because it's racist, you know what? But this is the counter effect. You know, historically black neighborhood, that's single family. Now they're buying these houses out and building more expensive houses that are going to most likely attract. Again, I'm not going to try to be racist. Most likely going to attract urban whites because this area is gentrifying anyway. And so what they're ultimately doing is they're actually speeding up the gentrification process. Because here's the reason why. You got a single family home, you pay $230 for the land, you can only charge $500, $600, $500,000. You can't really pay more than that $230 because then there's no profit for the developer. But if instead of, you can only put one residence at $600,000, instead you can put two residences on there for $600,000. Now guess what? You can offer a whole lot more than $230. I haven't even crunched the number. Yeah, $300, $330. So for residents who are maybe holding out or whatever else and said, well, you know, $230 isn't worth it. You know, historical black residents. How tempting is $300 going to be? How tempting is $330 going to be? You start putting that number up, when the developers can double the amount that they can sell it for, they can start increasing the price they can pay for that property, and what that's going to do is end up speeding up gentrification faster than it already is. You can't necessarily stop gentrification, but you definitely don't want to put policies in place that are going to speed it up if you're trying to prevent gentrification. And that's the whole thing with all three of these. If you think about it, you know, we've got the tax, the economic opportunity, where it's supposed to be bringing, you know, retail or giving money to the black community. Instead, it's turning over retail spaces, turning into residential areas, that most likely is not going to be bought by the black community. We have a 104 unit that is supposedly 50% of those are supposed to be affordable housing, and we're going on that qualifier, but they're obviously not affordable housing for black community or lower income black community, which again will be the demographic when you're talking about affordable housing that you're really, you know, keyword, or you're trying to say it's for. They're not going to do it, so you're speeding up gentrification there. And then you start saying, oh well, you know, multifamily and single family, we're going to break up the single family neighborhoods so they're not all white. Well, guess what? In the black neighborhoods that are gentrifying, all you're doing is making the gentrification go that much quicker. So that's what I talk about as far as when legislation or things that are meant to directly help African Americans most of the time are ineffective. And again, in this case, as an example, can actually be counterproductive. In this case, they're not helping retain, they're not helping the black community that's already here, and they're speeding up gentrification to basically forcing the black community out. So my solution always is again, and this goes back to the resentment aspect, is to deal with racial inequality by indirect means. And what I mean by that is, if racial inequality, or I guess poverty rate, racial inequality is reflected in the higher proportion of African Americans in poverty in relation to other races, well then what you do is, rather than necessarily directly addressing, as we've been talking about, that is counterproductive, you deal with it indirectly. A couple things that I propose can do that. One, lower taxes. And again, it's not lowering taxes on African Americans, African Americans specifically. You lower taxes on all low income across the board. A disproportionate amount of lower income, it's going to help them more. Next, I've talked before, and on my webpage you can see it, website, universal basic income. I call it American profit sharing plan, and basically what it means is putting money directly into the hands of the American people, regardless of income. Everybody gets a monthly payment out. And again, how that doesn't necessarily, that's not directed towards African Americans, that's to everybody. But again, since African Americans are disproportionately in low income, it's going to help them disproportionately, it's going to benefit them disproportionately. And the final one too is, and these are just examples, but the final one too, as far as that, is sunsetting 401ks. Sunsetting 401k, and I'm not going to talk about all this in detail. I'll talk about this later in another video. Sunsetting 401k and replacing that with a elective, a voluntary national pension plan that runs parallel to Social Security. I call it Social Security Plus. The reason why this again is beneficial is lower income earners don't participate in 401ks or in the same amount that even middle income or higher income people participate. So that increases the wealth gap right there. Also, because of the collapse of the Freedman Bank back in the 1874, I think it was, there is a lingering distrust from the black community in the stock market and investments. And I experienced this as a financial advisor. I found it very hard to have black clients who were interested in investing in the stock market. And I'm not saying, again, this is just my personal experience, not meaning to generalize or anything like that. But they preferred things like CDs, real estate, physical assets. And what that meant is that they didn't participate in the stock market. Stock market traditionally performs much better than those other types of assets. So, but if you have something like a Social Security Plus plan, a national voluntary pension, they trust Social Security, and therefore they'll be more likely to participate in retirement investments, wealth building. So again, that's one of those programs where it's not directed for African Americans, it's for all Americans. Again, I think the 401k, again, talking about another video, 401k has been a huge contributor in the income inequality gap across the board for all races, Americans, whatever else. But again, it disproportionately affected the black wealth gap. So we learned part one, some of the reasons for racial inequality. And here in part two, we basically learned is that dealing with racial inequality directly has two big drawbacks, or creates two big problems. One is resentment. By trying to deal with it directly, you create resentment against people who don't benefit from it, and therefore you lose elections and can't implement your policy. And the second is even when you are able to implement that policy, a lot of times it isn't effective. And actually, as examples I showed, is actually works counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve and works against it. So, again, it's better to deal with it, racial inequality, indirectly through some of the measures that I talked about. So I think that's one of the problems that the Democratic Party's had, is too many times we've had more talk and less action. And that's created a problem, which I understand is, you see in 2020, when the black community, I think specifically it was Ice Cube was bringing it up, but you heard in other things that the Democratic Party doesn't do enough. And that's, again, because when they're trying to deal with the racial inequality directly, as we talk about, it's not as effective. So again, that's why I think it's better to address the issue indirectly, less talk, more action, then the policies will be more effective and will truly actually fulfill our promises to the black community. So yep, that's been a long video today. Hopefully you stayed for all of it. Hopefully it was informative and worth your time. I'm BK Maginnis. What I'm going to say is I'm done walking. I'm going to walk home right around the corner. Maybe you got a little more walking to go to, or maybe this is day 2 of watching this video. But I'm BK Maginnis, your Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. It's been great talking to you today. Take care.